Ago. Stand by. I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Brianna Keeler. Our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash, is still with us. Our CNN Politics senior digital correspondent, Chris Moody, is with us. And our chief political analyst, Gloria Borger, is with us as well. Very quickly, because you were there, Dana, you attended this rally. One of the charming things about Donald Trump, if you will, is he just goes out there and speaks off the cuff. No teleprompters, no scripts. He doesn't read anything. He just goes out there and talks, unlike a lot of other scripted politicians.
You can say that again. He absolutely had no notes with him. He had no speech. He likes to remind other candidates that they speak from teleprompters, and he doesn't do it. And you definitely get the sense that he thinks about what he's going to say beforehand, but then when he gets up to the podium, it just kind of rolls off his tongue. You know, the fact that he said that he's going to make winning so frequent that people are going to get sick of winning, I think that was probably one of the best Trumpisms of all time. And actually the crowd went, huh? And he said, okay, fine. You're always going to like winning, I know.
You're never going to get sick of winning. He's on the cover of the new issue of Rolling Stone magazine. He's got this celebrity cool factor, if you will. It's certainly helping him, I believe, in the polls. He's going up and up and up. But does that usually last?
Well, the celebrity factor helped him get to where he is today, but he's also built on that. He's had a message, whether or not the policies are substantive, that hasn't mattered as much, but their message has been resonating with people. So many folks you talk to at the rally today, they say that Donald Trump speaks for me, says the things I haven't heard politicians say, but what I've felt for a long time. But here's the trick. Donald Trump has been able to define himself for so long in the media on his own terms, on his shows, and here on shows like this. But over the next few months, this is when the paid advertisements are going to start in the campaign, and other candidates and campaigns will work to frame him in a way he wouldn't necessarily like. So he's going to have to do that.
They have been trying.
They haven't spent much money on the airwaves.
Right.
Let that go on television, and we'll see where we stand in 3 months.
All right, he's getting a lot of free airtime right now, Donald Trump, because all the networks take what he says and they show it. And so that's free advertising, if you will. Let's talk a little bit about Jeb Bush, Gloria. He was on the debut.
Jeb who? Yeah.
Jeb Bush. He was on Stephen Colbert's debut of The Late Show last night, and he was asked specifically where he differs with his brother, the former president of the United States, George W. Bush.
I'm obviously younger.
You're younger.
Much better looking.
Policy, though. Any policy? Yeah. Any policy differences?
I think my brother probably didn't control the Republican Congress spending. I think he should have brought the hammer down on the Republicans when they were spending way too much, because our brand is limited government.
To which Donald Trump tweeted today, at Real Donald Trump, man, did Jeb throw his brother under the bus last night on Colbert Late Show? Probably true, but not nice.
Not nice, because Donald Trump is so nice to everybody else. Just called the president today and the people who negotiated the Iran deal stupid, right? Dana, look.
It's called very stupid.
Very stupid. Yeah. Jeb has a very difficult time distancing himself from his family, from his brother. We saw that when it took him 4 or 5 days to answer the question on whether the war in Iraq was a mistake. His brother himself, though, has said that he wishes he could have restrained spending more. This was not a real whack at his brother. He's playing to conservatives who say one of the reasons we don't like your brother is that he spent too much money and he didn't rein in spending. So I think Bush is kind of just playing to the base of the Republican Party there. I think his brother will forgive him.
And it's not the first time he said this. I mean, he was on a I'm Not My Brother tour, months ago. Maybe people weren't paying that close attention, but this is not probably the biggest audience that he said that to, but it's not the first time.
And by the way, Hillary's on the I'm Not Bill Clinton tour also. Just keep that in mind.
From time to time.
Because she's moving to the left, and whereas Bill Clinton was smack dab in the center, even to the right of the Democratic Party.
He was a more moderate, sort of New Democrat, they used to call it in those days. It took Jeb Bush, though, a few days to differentiate himself from his brother's position on going to war in Iraq. This time he seems to be moving a little bit more rapidly.
That's right, a few painful days. It felt like years, actually, I think, when he was doing that, and that was certainly very much a struggle for him. No, I think he's sort of confronting the fact that he has to differentiate himself, and if he's going to do it, then he better do it with some speed.
He's getting some support, Donald Trump, from some unlikely sources out there. Listen to this. This is Elizabeth Warren, the Democratic senator from Massachusetts, on The View, speaking about Donald Trump's tax policies.
There are a lot of places where he gets out and he talks about important things, like Donald Trump and I both agree that there ought to be more taxation of the billionaires, the people who are making their money on Wall Street.
And Warren Buffett has also supported Donald Trump's position, going after the billionaires. They can afford to pay more taxes.
Right. Two things. One is it's a more populist message, and that's what Elizabeth Warren is, and that's the wing of the Republican electorate that Trump has been appealing to in general. However, this is kind of a problem for Jeb Bush, because his whole message for the past 2 weeks has been Donald Trump isn't conservative enough. And this is actually an issue where Jeb Bush now agrees with Donald Trump, specifically on taxing hedge fund managers who aren't taxed on their regular income. They're taxed on investment income, which means they get to save a lot more of their money than most people do.
And this was the mistake Republicans realized they made in the last campaign, because Mitt Romney was the last of Bain Capital, was the last person in the world who was going to attack hedge fund managers and Wall Street. And Republicans understand, as Dana was just saying, that there's a populist movement in the Republican Party that is anti-Wall Street. And if they can tap into that, even somebody like Donald Trump, who says, I'm very, very rich, but you should tax me more, then they're going to be onto something. And it's something that lots of people said they wish Mitt Romney had done last time around.
He also seems to share a philosophy that Democrats, and certainly the Clinton campaign, believes, which is that this will be decided very much on the economy. You see Donald Trump, I think more than any other Republican, really getting to that point in a way that we see Democrats really talking about more.
Because it goes against the Republican traditional line, no new taxes, and what Donald Trump, in effect, is saying, yes, there can be some new taxes on hedge fund guys, for example.
Words we never thought we'd hear from Elizabeth Warren saying, I agree with Donald Trump on this. I think if you talk to a lot of people, you're right about the populism within the Republican Party. That's there. Donald Trump, though, I think is the only one who can really say, yeah, I think some people's taxes are going to go up. He's the only one who's going to be given a pass. Because you have Jeb Bush saying that, or anyone saying that in 2012 during the primary, they're just cut off. It's over for them.
And Gloria, Dr. Ben Carson, who's in a lot of the polls, he's number 2, not that far behind Donald Trump. He's the retired pediatric neurosurgeon from Johns Hopkins University. He's doing remarkably well, but he's also now distancing himself from Donald Trump on some sensitive issues like immigration. I want you to listen to what he said about Trump's idea that the 11 or 12 million illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants in the United States, should all be deported. The good ones can come back. Listen to this.
It sounds really cool, you know. Let's just round them all up and send them back. People who say that have no idea what that would entail in terms of our legal system, the cost. Forget about it. And plus, where are you going to send them? So, you know, that's just a double whammy.
This is really the first time that I've heard Dr. Ben Carson take off the gloves and go directly after Donald Trump on a sensitive issue like immigration.
Can you say he's number 2 and Donald Trump is number 1? And I think Ben Carson, what we're seeing is that he's decided that he's got to start taking on Donald Trump. And our own Maeve Reston out in California just reported that Carson again took on Donald Trump and said, he was asked about the biggest difference between himself and Donald Trump, and he said, I realize where my successes come from, and I don't in any way deny my faith in God. So what he's doing is he's appealing to evangelicals, and he is positioning himself as the man of faith against Donald Trump as a candidate of anger.
And he's not the only one going on the attack on the immigration line. The Koch brothers Hispanic group, the LIBRE initiative, released a letter today pointing out Donald Trump's positions on immigration, on sending everyone back, and saying this is wrong. Republicans should not stand for policies like this. So it's coming from a lot of sides right now.
On Ben Carson's Facebook page, which has been huge for him doing outreach, there is a cartoon that he has posted where it's Donald Trump sort of portrayed as a campaign bus, and he's saying, I don't see anyone right behind me, and then there's a little race car on top of the bus that is Ben Carson. He's represented by that race car. So this is someone who is, he sees that he's close to Donald Trump, that he's gaining on him, and he is doing certainly better with evangelicals and women.
And to that point, I think that in the last 24 hours we've seen the terrain campaign on the Republican side shift, and it's going to be much more, I think, in the coming days about Donald Trump and Ben Carson, the two outsiders vying for that top spot in those voters.
Usually when some of these Republican candidates attack Donald Trump, he doesn't waste any time. He hits them right back. Let's see what he does with
Dr.
Ben.
Well, he did with Sarah Murray today.
Well, let's see what he does with Dr. Ben Carson.
Yeah.
By the way,
he said he's wrong.
By the way, speaking, he said Jeb Bush is low energy. Donald Trump accused Jeb of having low energy. What about Ben Carson? He makes Jeb Bush look like the Energizer.
We're going to take a look at what's going on with Hillary Clinton. Stand by. We have a lot more to report. New information coming in. By the way, the Republican presidential candidates now just 1 week away from their second presidential debate. It will air only here on CNN on Wednesday, September 16th, live from the Reagan Library in California. Let's take a quick break. Much more right after this.